What if everything that kept JJK from collapsing went wrong? Not just one bad decision, not one missed opportunity. Every safeguard, every hero, every person who was supposed to stop the disaster, just gone. Because across these timelines, we'll see Sukuna reborn in the modern era. We'll see Megami become Sukuna's vessel long before he was ever supposed to. We'll watch Yuta Kotsu become something even worse than the original Sukuna. We'll see Kenjaku steal the strongest body in the world. And eventually, we'll arrive at the timeline that may be the darkest of them all. The one where Satoru Gojo decides humanity isn't worth saving. This video has 5 timelines, 5 disasters, and by the end of it, the world of Jujutsu Kaisen will be completely unrecognizable. Let's begin with a timeline where the King of Curses never needed reincarnation at all. Have you ever wondered what would happen if Sukuna was born in the modern era? A newborn with the most dangerous cursed energy power ever recorded, crying in a hospital room in Tokyo while every monitoring system at Jujutsu High starts going crazy at the same time, and completely breaks the entire Jujutsu Kaisen timeline. And if we're being honest, this version of Sukuna might be even worse, because instead of waking up in a world he has to catch up to, he gets to grow up inside of it, learn everything about it, and destroy piece by piece. Or maybe he'd just be a pawn for Kenjaku's master plan in this timeline. What if Kenjaku gets there first before Jujutsu High and makes his decision right away? He kills the parents and takes the baby. He begins the process that will make this child his ultimate vessel, not a puppet or a weapon, but the body of the strongest sorcerer to ever live. A body worth staying in, just like he stayed in Suguru Ghetto. The ultimate body he will eventually use to reshape the Jujutsu world and fight the strongest sorcerers of the era without any fear. So the story begins when Kenjaku kills Sukuna's parents and steals him as a baby. He raises Sukuna for a few years until the boy is old enough to handle the brain transplant technique. Once Sukuna is physically ready, Kenjaku makes his move on the not fully developed Sukuna, kills him by surprise, and transfers his brain into Sukuna's weakened body. After that, he creates his own way to suppress what is left of Sukuna's soul. He places a binding vow into the transplant itself, giving up part of the body's future growth in exchange for silence from the cursed energy still fighting back. He uses a miniature Uzumaki to dissolve low-grade spirits directly into the body's cursed energy field. This floods the body with so much foreign cursed energy that Sukuna's own cursed energy signature gets buried under the noise. Jujutsu High finally finds the boy, but by then it's too late. Kenjaku is already fully controlling the body that once belonged to Sukuna, so when Gojo arrives to save him, Kenjaku is already gone. He leaves to prepare his new body and get ready to face the strongest sorcerer directly, now with both his plan and his overwhelming new power, and the preparation does not take long. Kenjaku spends 3 days alone near the coast outside Tokyo, slowly pushing the body's output higher, and watching what happens around him like someone who has been testing things for 1,000 years. Kenjaku fires the dismantle cleanly without even using a hand sign. He does this from the lower pair of arms. He doesn't raise his voice or celebrate. By the end of the 3rd day, every monitoring station in Japan detects a power level not seen since the Heian era. Every alarm inside Jujutsu High starts going off at the same time. Somewhere in the building, someone picks up the phone to make the most important call of their life. And somewhere else in the city, Satoru Gojo suddenly freezes. 3 days of silence and testing on an empty coast, and Kenjaku is satisfied. He now knows exactly what this body can do, and he knows exactly where he is going next. The body is ready. The plan is ready. After 1,000 years of preparation, Kenjaku has finally found the vessel that makes everything else possible. Kenjaku rolls his shoulders, looks at the horizon, and starts walking towards Tokyo. He waited 1,000 years for this body, and he is not wasting another minute. Gojo arrives there in under 4 minutes. His 6 eyes are already active, scanning the entire area before he even lands. The cliff is gone. Seabirds are dropping from the sky across a 3-kilometer radius, crushed by the cursed energy before they can react. The ocean is still pulling back, and standing at the center of it all is a 4-armed figure releasing so much cursed energy that even the 6 eyes has trouble processing it. Kenjaku looks up with a smile, and opens Malevolent Shrine before Gojo's feet finish landing. Sukuna's domain explodes outward, with his full 200-meter guaranteed hit range, but Infinity blocks most of it. The shockwave destroys the entire shore. Gojo responds immediately by activating blue and red at the same time. One pulls broken pieces around him into a defensive ring. The other blasts outwards to push everything back and create distance. Kenjaku avoids red by using Sukuna's speed and cursed energy reinforcement to reduce the impact on his body. Right after that, he closes the distance and fires amplified cursed energy into the area around Gojo for 6 straight seconds. The pressure tears through the ground and keeps Gojo defending instead of attacking back. 4 arms move at once. 2 mouths are already preparing the next attack. This is not how Satoru Gojo has started any fight, and for a moment, it shows on his face. Then he adjusts immediately. But for the first time in a very long time, the gap between what Kenjaku sees and what he is actually ready for is not 0. He's now standing inside a new body, a powerful body, with every technique available at the same time. At that moment, Kenjaku finally understands why Ryumen Sukuna was worth waiting 1,000 years for. Infinity still holds, but the pressure feels wrong in a way Gojo has never experienced before. Every opponent Gojo has ever fought attacked Infinity from one direction at a time, but Kenjaku attacks it with 4 different technique streams at once. 2 attacks come from the upper arms and 2 from the lower ones. Dismantle fires from different angles at the same time, forcing Infinity to process 4 separate attacks at once. For the first time in Gojo's life, the Six Eyes has to rack 4 major threats at the same time. He immediately uses Falling Blossom Emotion to weaken the short hit effect from Malevolent Trine. Kenjaku opens Womb Profusion, his own barrierless domain, mid-fight. Then Gojo fires Hollow Purple at full power. Blue and red combine at the same angle that has ended fights before. Then Kenjaku uses Reverse Curse Technique, which runs through all 4 arms at the same time and heals the damage instantly. The blast leaves behind a big crater, big enough to swallow an entire city block. Kenjaku stands at the center of it. Both mouths are still talking, and all 4 hands are already moving into the next set of signs. But Gojo deliberately destroys his own brain with cursed energy, restores his burn techniques in 3 seconds using Reverse Curse Technique, and returns at full power. And for the first time in his life, that statement is not Gojo's to make. The 4 arms are not just for appearance, they completely change how the fight works. And every technique Gojo spends his life mastering was built around opponents with only 2 arms. He's not losing, but he's also not winning the way he normally does. And that difference matters more than any single technique on either side. So 2 hours pass, and from the outside the fight looks equal, but from the inside, Gojo knows he's losing. But here's the thing, every time Gojo destroys and regrows his brain to reset his technique, Kenjaku attacks from multiple directions at once. That pressure forces Gojo to use the next reset even faster than the last one. The Six Eyes keeps tracking and calculating at full capacity without stopping, but it is doing all of that at 4 times the level it was meant to handle. And during every exchange, Satoru Gojo can feel something building in the background through cursed spirit manipulation. Before heading to Tokyo, Kenjaku had already loaded the body with hundreds of absorbed cursed spirits. Now, a maximum technique is slowly forming through those dissolved spirits feeding into the shadows. Slow, hidden, and almost complete. He needs to stop it before it fully forms. He presses harder and fires Hollow Purple 2 more times in under a minute at maximum output. Both attacks come from angles no opponent has ever survived. Then he uses Unlimited Void for the shortest possible time to force a reaction and create an opening. And the crazy thing is, Kenjaku opens Womb Profusion again, and expands the short hit field directly on top of the first one. The pressure on Infinity doubles. Falling Blossom Emotion counterattacks with the same amount of force and cancels out each slash. And that creates another reset window of 3 seconds. And that is exactly how long Kenjaku's Binding Vow requires. 1 relative minute within 4 meters to seal someone. The strongest sorcerer of the modern era disappears into the cursed object, and Kenjaku slips it into his pocket without even slowing down. Every monitoring station in Japan detects Satoru Gojo's cursed energy signature and then suddenly loses it. The room at Jujutsu High goes completely silent for 30 seconds. And this is where things get crazier. Nanami stands up, not because he panics, because he's been watching the numbers this whole time, and the numbers are telling him the same thing. They are out of time. Kento Nanami leads the first response himself, because sitting still is still a choice, and he has never been the kind of person to make it. He arrives near Shinjuku with Naobito Zenin and 4 grade 1 sorcerers, because if Gojo could not stop what is now walking towards them, then sending grade 2 sorcerers would just be foolish. Naobito Zenin immediately uses projection sorcery with no hesitation, because if it works, the fight will end instantly. There's no reason to hold back your best technique when the situation is already this bad, but he quickly realizes it will not work. Projection sorcery limits opponents to movement based on 24 frames per second, but it also needs his palm to touch the target. Unfortunately, every path Naobito tried to take already had a dismantle waiting there. He could not apply the technique to something he could never physically reach. The dismantle spread that followed takes 2 grade 1 sorcerers out of the fight before anyone can react. Naobito takes a cleave across the torso, and Falling Blossom Emotion activates automatically from reflex. But that is the last thing it ever does for him, because the next dismantle hits while the reflex is still active. Nanami is the only one standing. 7-3 ratio is active, blade extended, blood force at maximum. He lands 5 hits in 90 seconds with the same precision he has shown in every fight, and every hit heals before the next one lands. The 6th hit never comes. A dismantle cuts through his ratio before he can activate it, and Nanami goes down in Shinjuku. The report that follows tells every remaining sorcerer what kind of situation they're really in. This was not just a fight that went badly. This was the absolute limit of what the modern Jujutsu world could do when everyone was fully committed, and even that was not even close. But then the story takes an even darker turn. Yuta Kotsu is already flying back when the report reaches him. He reads it once, puts it down, and tells the pilot to go faster without even looking up. Maki Zenin picks up the slit soul katana the moment she hears about it, like she was waiting for a reason to use it. Because someone has to go, and there's nobody left who can. No matter what happens next, she is going to do her part. Choso starts moving before anyone even contacts him. To him, Kenjaku is his father in every biological and hateful sense of the word, and stopping him has been Choso's main goal since before all of this even started. The 3 meet outside Shinjuku with the only real plan that they have. They cannot let the opponent freely open their domain. So the goal is to overwhelm the body's RCT by dealing more damage at once than it can heal in a single cycle. cycle. Choso detonates supernova at point-blank range, sending compressed blood orbs in every direction. The cursed spirits block the outer spread, but the blast in the center forces them out of position. The attack forces the cursed spirit shields out of position and blocks escape routes before they can fully form. Maki rushes through the opening at heavenly restriction speed with a split soul katana. She targets the part of the body that take the longest to heal with RCT. She lands 2 hits, but both wounds already start healing before the second attack even finishes. Yuta stays back on purpose. When Maki's second hit left a wound open long enough, a piece of severed flesh fell off. Rika consumes it immediately before it even touches the ground. And that was the opening Yuta had been waiting for. One piece of the body was all she needed to begin the copy technique. And because the only way to truly surprise someone who has survived for 1,000 years is to show him something they have never seen before, Yuta enters the fight. He joins in when Kenjaku's turned towards Choso to finish him. His first sword carries Toga Inumaki's cursed speech through Rika. The command permanently burns out Toga's copy technique, but it stops Kenjaku from activating cursed spirit manipulation for 1 full second. And that was the only opening Choso needed. He fired piercing blood at point blank range through his left shoulder at maximum compression, using the same level of power that punched through reinforced concrete in Shibuya without slowing down. The wound opens deep and real, but then comes the moment that changes the entire fight. Maki attacks before it closes. The split soul katana cuts the soul directly, which disrupts RCT from inside the wound instead of outside of it. That forces the healing to work outward instead of inward. But here's the problem. The wound stays open for 3 full seconds. That is the longest any injury on this body has stayed open since Kenjaku took over, and all 3 of them notice that immediately. For Yuta and the others, that moment feels much longer than it really is. Long enough for their thoughts to completely freeze for the first time since the fight started. Yuta swings a second sword with cleave already copied from earlier, copied through Rika during the fight, aiming for the lower joints. Kenjaku activates domain amplification and completely negates the cleave entirely before it can connect. And here, for the first time in the entire fight, Kenjaku stops moving for half a second. He looks at the negated technique. Then he looks at Yuta. His expression changes. He sounds genuinely excited when he speaks. Then Kenjaku opens womb perfusion without a barrier, and Yuta answers with authentic mutual love at the exact same moment. The 2 short hit effects collide in the overlap zone. The force from the mutual cancellation throws every fighter within 80 meters off their feet at the same exact time. When the dust settles, Kenjaku has blood on both hands. It is already healing. For 3 seconds, Kenjaku looks at his own technique being used against him and realizes something. Across 1,000 years of fighting and alliances, he has never seen anything like this before. And that's when the true madness finally starts. Kenjaku ends it with maximum Uzumaki. He has been building it across the entire fight without anyone noticing. Dissolved cursed spirits keep feeding compressed cursed energy into the shadows while every sorcerer was focused on the 4 arms. He releases it as a ring explosion centered on himself because directional attacks give defenders something to react to, and he is done holding back in this fight. By running RCT at full output through all 4 arms, he keeps the backlash from destroying his body long enough for it to matter. Rika's barrier blocks the attack for Yuta. Then Rika completely shatters. The cursed form created from everything Yuta refused to let go of is finally gone. Maki Zenin pushes through the shockwave because of her heavenly restriction, but the split soul katana flies out of her hand and disappears into the rubble 50 meters away. Choso takes a hit directly, but blood manipulation cannot hold his body together fast enough, and he goes down too. Every remaining sorcerer nearby drops at the same exact time. Yuta is the only one still conscious. One knee is on the ground, one arm is broken. Copy is completely burned out. Even then, he does not look away from Kenjaku across the clearing. Kenjaku looks back at him across the wreckage with something close to respect. He pauses for a few seconds. Then he turns and walks towards Master Tengen's location, because the fighting is finally over, and the plan he started over 1,000 years ago is finally close to completion. With Gojo sealed and every major threat taken down, Kenjaku reaches Master Tengen and starts the merger immediately. Both mounts chant the incantation at the same time. All 4 hands hold the required hand signs in parallel. The binding vow inside the culling game is still active. Tengen has evolved beyond human and become closer to a cursed spirit, so they cannot resist cursed spirit manipulation. And Kenjaku does not need permission anyway. The merger begins. Barriers across Japan activate at the same exact time. Every person inside every colony feels it at the same moment. It is a feeling Master Tengen described. The boundaries between individual souls begin to dissolve. The impurities of millions of people start pouring outward in every direction without limit. Kenjaku has been defeated by 6 Eyes users twice over the last 1,000 years, and both times he rebuilt everything from nothing. But to Kenjaku, failure was never permanent. And now, standing at the center of the biggest cursed ritual in history, Kenjaku watches it finally complete. The JJK world starts to collapse. The institutions, the bloodlines, the hierarchies, and the sorcerers who believed they were protecting something all get pulled into what happens next. Everyone else is defeated, and Kenjaku finally completes the plan he started long before any of them were born. As terrifying as this version of Sukuna is, he still isn't the most dangerous person we'll cover today. The first timeline showed us what happens when Sukuna is given the perfect opportunity. Let's see what happens when the person who was supposed to stop Sukuna becomes his vessel instead. Megami holds one of Sukuna's severed fingers above his mouth. His hand is shaking, and you can see the fear in his eyes. His entire body is keeps telling him that this is wrong, that this is the single most dangerous thing a sorcerer could possibly do, and then he swallows it. Now, you're probably wondering, why on earth would a trained jujutsu sorcerer willingly consume a cursed object that belongs to the king of curses? That's the exact question that changes everything about Jujutsu Kaisen, because in the original story, it was Yuji Itadori who ate that finger to save his friends from a cursed spirit, an accident born out of desperation. But what if it was Megumi instead? And what if it wasn't an accident at all? What if Megumi, the most calculating first year at Tokyo Jujutsu High, looked at all of his options and decided that becoming Sukuna's vessel was the best one? Megumi is not the type to make reckless decisions, but there is one thing that breaks through all of that calm logic every time: his sister, Sumiki Fushiguro. In the original timeline, Sumiki fell into an unending sleep after being cursed, and that single event is what drove Megumi to become a sorcerer. Now, in this scenario, that motivation gets pushed to its limit. Megumi finds out that Sumiki's condition is getting worse much faster than expected. The cursed energy keeping her asleep is growing stronger by the day, and the doctors at Jujutsu High have no explanation for it. Normal methods are not working. Even reverse curse technique cannot affect whatever is keeping her bound. Shoko has exhausted every medical option available to her, and the higher-ups at Jujutsu High refuse to spend resources on one girl when bigger threats need their attention. They see Sumiki as a lost cause, a casualty of a world that doesn't have time for mercy. Megumi is out of time. The specialists give her weeks before the curse consumes her completely. The time to act is running out fast. But then he hears something, a rumor buried deep in old jujutsu records so old that most sorcerers don't even know they exist. Cursed objects with massive cursed energy have been shown to overwhelm and destroy weaker curses inside the human body when that energy flows through a connected sorcerer. One of Sukuna's fingers contains enough cursed energy to destroy entire city blocks. If that energy could be sent through Megumi's connection to Sumiki as her brother, it might be enough to destroy the curse keeping her asleep from the inside. It's a desperate and dangerous theory with almost no evidence behind it, but a theory is still more than what anyone else has given him, and Megumi does not have the luxury of waiting for a better option. He tracks down one of Sukuna's fingers that Jujutsu High had stored as a special grade cursed object in a secured facility. He breaks in using knowledge of the building's barrier system that only a student of Gojo's would have. He takes the finger. Then, in a moment that would terrify anyone who knows what Sukuna can do, Megumi eats it. The immediate effect is exactly what you would expect, but 100 times worse. The cursed energy floods Megumi's body. It is violent and overwhelming. For a few seconds, Megumi genuinely thinks he might die from the sheer force of it. His vision goes white. His cursed energy spikes so hard that the barriers around the storage facility break apart instantly. But he does not die. His own cursed energy starts fighting back against the intrusion with everything it has. Years of training kick in, and he slowly starts getting it under control. And Gojo, who just returned from his long mission, feels it immediately. He was already heading to the school when the spike hit, so he arrives within minutes. Gojo finds Megumi on his knees in the destroyed vault, surrounded by broken talismans and blood running from his nose. The finger is gone, and Gojo understands what happened immediately. He can see the cursed energy inside Megumi's body. He can see Sukuna's soul wrapped around Megumi's like a snake. And for the first time in years, Gojo looks genuinely worried. Not because Sukuna is loose, but because his vessel is different. Yuji Itadori was physically built to contain something monstrous. Megumi is different. He relies on technique, not physical strength. Gojo reaches out to help Megumi up, but Megumi pulls away. He looks Gojo in the eye, blood dripping from his chin, and says the one thing that changes everything: Sumiki. He did all of this for Sumiki, and now Gojo has a choice: execute Megumi like the higher-ups would eventually demand, or find another way. But here's what nobody sees coming. Kinjaku has been watching this whole thing from the start. He has people and cursed spirits watching everywhere, along with moles inside the jujutsu world, and the moment he learns that a first-year student willingly became Sukuna's vessel, he realizes his plan needs to move faster. In the original story, Kinjaku had to wait months for Yuji to eat enough fingers, for Shibuya to happen, and for Sukuna to take Megumi's body. But now Megumi is already the vessel. Sukuna is already awake, and Kinjaku is not going to waste this chance. But here's the problem. Megumi is under Gojo's protection at Tokyo Jujutsu High, and Kinjaku is not stupid enough to attack the strongest sorcerer directly. So he does something smarter. Kinjaku unleashes a massive cursed spirit attack on downtown Tokyo. Not on the level of Shibuya, but still big enough that Gojo has to respond himself. Hundreds of civilians are in danger, special grade curses appearing in multiple locations at once. Gojo has no choice. He leaves to deal with them, and the moment he is gone, Kinjaku's team attacks Jujutsu High. They use anti-barrier techniques that only someone with 1,000 years of knowledge could know. They break through the school's defense within minutes. They find Megumi in the medical wing, still recovering from the first finger's effects. 3 of them rush Maki right away, thinking numbers will overwhelm her. Maki swings her polearm and cuts through the first curse user's barrier technique. Then she turns and strikes the other end of the weapon into the second attacker's ribs, cracking them on instantly. But the third curse user gets past her and rushes towards the medical wing door. Panda stops him. His punch hits the curse user hard enough to send them through a wall. Then Panda switches cores. The gorilla core activates, and his body suddenly grows much larger and more muscular. He grabs another intruder by the throat and slams them into the floor. Then Nanami arrives. He was inside the administrative building when the barriers fell. His ratio technique activates instantly, and he finds the weak point on the lead curse user's shoulder. But there are too many enemies. The defenders are outnumbered, and more enemies keep entering through the barriers. Maki tells Shoko gonna get Megami out through the back exit, but Shoko is still trying to stabilize Megami's cursed energy flow. She cannot move him without risking his life. And finally, the cursed spirits and users break into the medical wing. Maki takes down 2 more, but one slashes her across the back with a cursed energy blade. Nanami is fighting 4 enemies at once. His ratio technique is burning through cursed energy faster than he can recover it. Then, in the middle of Kenjaku's carefully planned confusion, he kidnaps Megami, and by the time Maki breaks free and reaches the room, Megami is already gone. All that is left is a fading cursed energy signature, and the sound of Kenjaku's team escaping through the broken barriers. Kenjaku does not waste time. He takes Megami to a hidden underground facility, a place that does not exist on any map, and there he does something that should be impossible. He feeds Megami the remaining fingers one by one. The fingers Jogo collected, the fingers hidden across Japan, the fingers cursed users kept hidden for centuries. Kenjaku has been tracking them for 1,000 years. He knows exactly where fingers are hidden. Megami's body shakes with each finger, and to recreate the effect of the hidden finger, Kenjaku does something desperate. He brings Sukuna's Heian era body, the original body that Sukuna used 1,000 years ago, the same body preserved as a cursed object. Then Sukuna, inside Megami's body, consumes his own original body. The cursed energy surge from it makes up for the missing finger. Then Kenjaku puts Megami in the bath, the same ritual used in the original timeline to remove the vessel's rejection and give Sukuna complete control. His eyes roll back, and when they open again, they are no longer Megami's eyes. They are Sukuna's, all 4 of them. The King of Curses stretches his new body and smiles. Then he summons Maharaga and tames him. Gojo thinks Megami was taken by rogue curse users. He thinks this is a normal rescue mission. He has no idea what is waiting for him. So Gojo enters the underground facility alone, and he finds Ryum and Sukuna waiting for him. Sukuna smiles through Megami's mouth and says the one thing that tells Gojo that this is already over. Took you long enough. The fight starts and it immediately turns into chaos. Gojo opens Unlimited Void. Sukuna counters with Malevolent Shrine. Then Sukuna summons Maharaga to adapt to Unlimited Void too. The wheel spins and the adaptation completes. For the first time in history, Gojo's Unlimited Void fails. Sukuna walks straight through it. He grabs Gojo by the throat and slams him through 3 floors of concrete. Gojo tries to counter with Hollow Purple, but Sukuna already saw it coming. He uses 10 shadows to summon Rabbit Escape. Thousands of rabbits rush at Gojo, blocking his vision, movement, and technique activation. While Gojo is distracted, Sukuna hits him with a cleave that cuts through infinity itself. The strongest falls. Satoru Gojo has been cut, deep across his chest and through his ribs. A wound that should be impossible, because infinity is supposed to stop anything from touching him, except now it doesn't. Maharaga's wheel finished spinning, and the technique that protected Gojo from everything, the technique that made him the strongest sorcerer alive, just stopped working. Gojo tries to use reverse curse technique to heal himself. He has done it countless times before, so it should be automatic by now, but Sukuna does not give him the chance. Not even a second passes. Sukuna is already in front of him, punching Gojo in the stomach hard enough to bring down part of the building. Sukuna jumps down after him calmly, like he already knows the fight is over. Gojo forces himself back to his feet. His vision is getting blurry. He can feel his cursed energy trying to heal the damage, but the wound goes deeper than normal injuries. Gojo cannot create distance from Sukuna anymore because distance no longer matters due to Maharaga's adaptation. But still, Gojo tries one more time. He gathers every bit of cursed energy he has left and fires Hollow Purple directly at Sukuna. The attack tears forward, able to destroy anything in its way. Sukuna dodges it easily, like it was nothing. Then he lowers his hand and starts attacking with Dismantle. But this version is different. This slash has already been adapted by Maharaga's wheel and reinforced with enough cursed energy to cut space itself. It tears through the air, through what is left of infinity, and through Gojo's chest. Gojo drops to his knees. His eyes are still open. His 6 eyes, the greatest ability in Jujutsu history, are now staring at nothing. Sukuna stands over him, and for a moment, the underground station goes completely silent. Above ground, the sorcerers from Tokyo Jujutsu High feel it. The cursed energy across the area suddenly changes. It feels like something huge just disappeared. Every sorcerer who has ever been around Gojo understands what this means. The strongest sorcerer is gone, and the world just became a much darker place. After that, the story stops being about a fight and starts becoming about the end of everything. Kenjaku has been waiting for this moment for 1,000 years. He has been waiting for the right conditions, and now every condition he needed for the merger has finally been met. And let me explain what the merger actually is, because this is where everything starts getting much worse. Master Tengen is the immortal barrier user who has protected Jujutsu society for centuries. Their curse technique gives immortality, but it does not stop aging. Without a star plasma vessel to reset the body, Tengen kept evolving over time. Eventually, they became more cursed spirit than human, and that created a huge weakness nobody fully understood until it was too late. A being that is more cursed spirit than human can be controlled by cursed spirit manipulation, and that just happens to be Kenjaku's technique. In the original timeline, there were safeguards. Yuki Sumuko and Choso were guarding the tombs of the Star Corridor to protect Master Tengen. The sorcerers had time to prepare, plan, and fight back, but in this timeline, none of that happens. Satoru Gojo is away dealing with a cursed spirit attack created by Kenjaku. The sorcerers are scattered. Yuki never gets the chance to guard Tengen. Choso never reaches the tombs, and when Gojo goes underground to fight Sukuna, nobody is left to stop Kenjaku from walking into Tengen's chamber and taking what he wants. So, Kenjaku captures Master Tengen and uses cursed spirit manipulation to force them into submission, and Tengen cannot resist because their evolution made them vulnerable to the exact technique Kenjaku uses. And with Tengen under his control, the final part of his 1,000-year plan finally falls into place. Tengen's barriers spread across all of Japan. They form a huge network of cursed energy that connects people, places, and boundaries. When Master Tengen merges with humanity, those barriers collapse in on themselves. The boundaries between people disappear. The negative emotions of over 100 million humans combine into one massive cursed energy source. And at that point, people in Japan stop being normal humans. They become something else entirely, something outside the normal physical world. What happened in Tokyo during the culling game was only a preview. The real merger spreads across the entire country, and then the rest of the world. Kenjaku does not need the culling game in this timeline. The culling game was always just a ritual to prepare Japan for the merger. It filled the colonies with cursed energy and moved people to the other side. But in this timeline, Sukuna's resurrection already gave enough cursed energy to make up for it. The release of all 19 fingers, the destruction of the underground facility, Gojo's death, all of it added more power to the barriers across Japan. Now, the barriers are already full of cursed energy. All Kenjaku needs is a trigger, and with Master Tengen under his control, he has it. He activates the merger, the barriers activate, the cursed energy network lights up across the sky, and every person in Japan feels it at the same time. A strange feeling spreads through their minds. The line between themselves and the people around them starts to disappear. The thing that makes each person unique slowly starts to fade away. And Megumi Fushiguro, the boy who started all of this, his soul is still buried deep inside the darkness of the bath. Even the merger cannot reach him. He gave up everything to save his sister. He became Sukuna's vessel to find a cure for Sumiki. But in the end, the cure was never real. The idea that Sukuna's cursed energy could burn out the curse was only a theory from old records. Nobody had even proven it worked. Megumi risked everything on that theory, and he lost. The question we asked at the beginning was simple. Why would a trained jujutsu sorcerer willingly eat a Sukuna finger? And the answer was love. Megumi did it for Sumiki. But the real question was never why he did it. The real question was whether it would matter. And the answer was no. Kenjaku adapted to the new events and planned for every possible way the sorcerers could fight back. And Megumi, the most calculating first year at Jujutsu High, ends up giving Kenjaku exactly what he needs. The merger is complete. The world changes. And now, there's no one left to stop it. And somehow, this isn't even the worst fate waiting for a Jujutsu High student in this compilation. Megumi's tragedy came from making the wrong choice for the right reason. It's the closest thing the Jujutsu world has ever seen to an extinction event. You already know what Sukuna chose when he had the chance. Megumi Fushiguro. The 10 Shadows. The most calculated move the King of Curses could make. But what if, months before any of that happened, he found something better? What if Sukuna woke up inside the one person that Satoru Gojo himself said might one day surpass him? In canon, Sukuna chose Megumi Fushiguro. This is what happens if he chose Yuta Kotsu instead. The year is 2017. It's December 24th. Yuta just defeated Suguru Geto during the night parade of 100 demons. He freed Rika's soul and discovered his own power as a descendant of Michizane Sugawara. Gojo's plan was to send Yuta overseas with Miguel to train and turn that massive potential into something even stronger. But before Yuta left Japan, one last mission came in, and it changed everything. A Sukuna finger was located at a remote shrine in northern Japan. Local sorcerers had been monitoring it for weeks, but the seal was falling apart, and the cursed spirits drawn to its power were getting worse by the day. Normal people were dying. Regular people who had no idea what a cursed spirit even was, just going about their lives one minute and getting torn apart the next, because one severed finger from a 1,000-year-old monster was sitting in a shrine like a magnet for every nightmare in a 50-mile radius. Jujutsu High needed someone on site immediately, and Yuta was the closest special grade available. When Yuta arrived, the situation was already completely out of control. Cursed spirits had crowded the entire area, the local sorcerers were overwhelmed, civilians were trapped, and the finger's power was growing stronger with every death it caused. And Yuta, being the guy who vowed his life to protect people he cared about, did the exact same thing Yuji did in the original timeline. He didn't think about the consequences. He didn't calculate the risk. He didn't strategize. He saw people dying and he acted immediately. He swallowed the finger to draw the cursed spirits toward himself instead of the village. And just like that, the King of Curses had a new home. Now, here's the dangerous thing, and this is where the timeline really matters. This happens before the main story even starts. In the original timeline, Yuji Itadori swallows a Sukuna finger at Sugisawa High School. This happened when his friends were being attacked by cursed spirits. And that was the moment Sukuna was reincarnated. But in this timeline, that event never happens, because Sukuna is already awake inside Yuta Kotsu. When Gojo eventually goes to Sugisawa to retrieve the finger stored there, it is just a cursed object. There's no desperate kid swallowing it to save his friends. There's no reincarnation. Gojo simply collects it and brings it back to Jujutsu High for safekeeping. Yuji Itadori goes on living his normal life, completely unaware that in another timeline, he was the one carrying the weight of the world. And now, you'd think this would basically be the same story as Yuji's, just with a different face and maybe a cooler sword. But here's the thing, and it's a big thing. Yuta is not Yuji. Yuji was a kid who couldn't even see curses, with no cursed energy awareness, until the moment he ate that finger. His body was a cage for Sukuna, and the only thing keeping the King of Curses contained was Yuji's rare innate ability to act as a living cage, something that appears only once in 1,000 years, combined with Kenjaku's preparation at birth. Yuta, on the other hand, has more cursed energy than Satoru Gojo. His cursed energy reserves are so massive that other sorcerers can feel it the moment he walks into a room. So when Sukuna wakes up inside Yuta's body, he is not in an empty room with breakable locks. He's in a fortress with armed guards and a very angry special grade cursed spirit floating over him like a hawk that has been waiting for this exact moment. Rika does not play around. She never has. So Sukuna can't immediately just take over. And this is where the story starts to split in a really interesting way, because unlike Yuji, Yuta actually has the firepower to keep Sukuna suppressed, at least for now. Rika wraps around Yuta's consciousness like armor, and the two of them together, the Queen of Curses and the special grade sorcerer, form a barrier that Sukuna can't easily break through. And Yuta can still use his techniques. Copy, reverse curse technique. He can still manifest Rika and access every stored technique inside her arsenal. He is basically functioning normally, just with a very unwanted passenger screaming in the back seat and sometimes trying to grab the wheel. The thing is, Sukuna is patient, smart, and has nothing but time to study the prison he's trapped in. Every time Yuta uses a technique, Sukuna learns something new. Every time Rika appears, Sukuna starts figuring out her patterns. He isn't just trapped, he's learning everything around him. And just think about how insane that actually is. The most dangerous entity in the history of Jujutsu is sitting quietly inside Yuta Kotsu, taking notes, not fighting, not screaming, just watching, waiting, building a map of every wall and every lock in the place that's holding him. That is what makes the situation so dangerous. The longer Sukuna stays inside Yuta, the more he learns how to escape. And here's the thing about Rika specifically. The problem with her isn't that she can be beaten, it's that she can be confused. The bond that makes her powerful is the exact same bond that makes her hesitate, and that detail is going to matter a lot later. And here's what that means for the world. Not just for Yuta, not for Jujutsu High, for everyone. Sukuna in Yuji's body was a nightmare that sorcerers at least had a framework for. Sukuna in Yuta's body, with Copy and Rika and those cursed energy reserves, is something nobody has a plan for. There is no contingency, there is no precedent. If this goes wrong, and it already is going wrong, there's nothing in the Jujutsu world that is designed to stop it. This is where Gojo's problem gets much worse. Yuta is not just some random vessel. He is Gojo's distant relative from the Sugawara bloodline, the student he personally trained, and the person he protected when the higher-ups wanted him executed. Yuta was only one of 4 special grade sorcerers alive. Gojo himself even says Yuta could one day surpass him. The Jujutsu higher-ups want Yuta dead immediately, without any trial or discussion, but Gojo holds them off, not through an argument or negotiation, through the simple fact that losing Yuta while Sukuna is inside him is catastrophic in either direction. If they execute Yuta, Sukuna doesn't die, he just needs a new host, and finding another vessel strong enough to contain the King of Curses is not something Jujutsu Society can afford to do twice. So the higher-ups make the call they always make when Satoru Gojo is in the room. They wait, they monitor, they plan something for later, when Gojo isn't watching, and Gojo knows that, which means Yuta can never fully stop looking over his shoulder, not at the curses, but at the people who are supposed to be on his side. And that arrangement holds, right up until Shibuya, right up until the moment Gojo is sealed, and there's no one left in that room to hold them off. Now, Kenjaku's plan shifts dramatically. See, Kenjaku's entire strategy is built around a carefully designed vessel. He took over a woman named Kaori Itadori, had a child through her, and sealed one of Sukuna's fingers inside that child at birth. That was the plan from day one, a vessel made specifically for Sukuna. With cursed energy mechanics Kenjaku fully understands. Every condition is accounted for, and every outcome is predictable. But Yuta is never part of that strategy. He's an unpredictable sorcerer with an ability Kenjaku never planned for. The cursed energy inside Yuta works very differently from what Kenjaku expected, and because of the copy technique, even if Sukuna takes over, the results become hard to predict. That scares Kenjaku, because he has spent 1,000 years trying to remove unpredictability from the equation, and Rika is also something he never planned for, which makes him nervous. A nervous Kenjaku is dangerous, because now he has to improvise, and when ancient masterminds start improvising, things usually get much messier and far more destructive than their normal plans. But Kenjaku doesn't stay nervous for long. He looks at what should have been a disaster, thinks about it for a while, and then sees a gift. This is who we're dealing with. After 1,000 years of planning, he can simply switch. He can flip the table and find the angle that benefits him before most people even realize the table moved. He realizes Sukuna inside Yuta is not a problem. In fact, it's the biggest upgrade the King of Curses has ever received, and Kenjaku decides to help make it possible. Think about it from his perspective. Copy is devastating, but it runs on rules. Rika has to consume a piece of the original user first, and she only gets 5 minutes of full manifestation. Every technique Sukuna copies, every weapon he adds to the arsenal, it all operates on that 5-minute timer during full manifestation. And Yuta already has more cursed energy than Gojo. That means Sukuna now has a massive amount of cursed energy to use, and every attack hits with overwhelming force. It is a strategy that massively boosts Kenjaku's plan. A stronger Sukuna means more chaos, more cursed energy spreading through the world, and more fuel for the great merger. Kenjaku does not need to stop Sukuna from taking over Yuta. He needs to help it happen. So the Shibuya incident gets closer, and Kenjaku does not change his plan. He just improves it slightly. Gojo is the only person who can stop a fully awakened Sukuna-Yuta combination, so this plan has to work. Satoru Gojo still walks into the trap. He still sees Pseudo-Geto's face. He still gets hit with that 1 minute of mental processing that costs him everything. The Prism Realm works, and he is sealed. And with him goes the only reason the higher-ups were staying their hand. But while everyone is focused on the Shibuya incident and Gojo sealing, Kenjaku is running a second operation at the same time, and this one is aimed directly at Yuta. He places special grade curses and cursed users in Yuta's path to keep him fighting for as long as possible. Not to kill him, just to wear him down. Every fight drains Yuta's cursed energy. Every copy technique uses up Rika's stored supply. Every use of reverse curse technique weakens the barrier keeping Sukuna contained. And Rika cannot protect Yuta's mind and fight at the same time forever, especially against this many enemies attacking from every direction. And this is what makes it so unfair. Yuta is winning. He cuts through curses easily, switches between copy techniques with perfect timing, and heals himself every time he gets hurt. He is doing everything right, but doing everything right uses energy, and energy is limited, and Sukuna is counting every bit of it. Hours of fighting, wave after wave, with no backup and no time to recover. Every time he uses copy too much, every time Rika appears and disappears again, the walls get weaker. The first sign is small. Yuta's hand suddenly moves on its own during a fight. Just a twitch. A finger bends into a position he did not choose. He fixes it immediately, but he already knows what it means. Sukuna is not trying to fight him. He's waiting for him to run out of cursed energy. And here's what makes this so much worse than the Megami situation. At this exact moment, the sorcerers still in the field are stretched across Shibuya dealing with the chaos Kenjaku has unleashed. Nobody has eyes on Yuta. Nobody knows what is happening to him in real time. The people who might have been able to help are already gone or already fighting for their lives somewhere else. Somewhere in Sendai, Yuji Itadori is watching breaking news footage of Shibuya with no idea what any of this means. Just a kid on a couch watching a city burn. A completely normal life, and that is the only thing that separates him from all of this. Yuta is totally alone, and the walls are getting thinner by the minute. Then the moment finally comes. Yuta Kotsu is exhausted after hours of fighting. He is separated from the other sorcerers, and Rika is almost out of energy. Sukuna does not force his way through. He waits for the exact moment Yuta's resistance reaches zero, then strikes, and the barrier shatters instantly. And for one horrible second, Yuta Kotsu is asleep, and the King of Curses opens his eyes inside Yuta's body. But the takeover isn't fully finished yet, because Rika is still there. She feels it the moment the barrier drops. The bond is still intact. It has to be. It is woven into the cursed energy of the body itself. But the person on the other side is wrong. It's not Yuta. It looks like Yuta. It moves like Yuta. The cursed energy signature is Yuta's, because Sukuna hasn't had enough time to fully overwrite it. But the presence beyond the eyes is something ancient and cold and completely indifferent to her. She fights it immediately. She pushes against Sukuna with everything she has, trying to find the boy underneath the intrusion, trying to force Sukuna back into whatever corner Yuta had been keeping him in. But Sukuna doesn't fight her. He does something a lot worse. He waits for her to tire herself out too, and then he reaches for the thing she cannot ignore. He uses Yuta's voice, not Sukuna's voice coming out of Yuta's mouth. That would be easy to reject. He uses the same exact cadence and tone that Yuta used when he told Rika she could rest. The same sound that freed her soul, and you feel it the moment it happens. The way she hesitates. 1 second, even less, but it's still there. The thing that has killed monsters stops moving, and in that hesitation, Sukuna finds the thread. This is the part nobody could have predicted, and nobody could have stopped. He doesn't try to destroy the bond between Rika and Yuta. He starts absorbing it. Every time he used Yuta's cursed energy, and he's been doing this for months, every time he surfaced even slightly, he has been pulling the connections towards himself, slowly, piece by piece, until there's enough of him attached to it that Rika can't cleanly separate the two. Rika tries. She screams against the wrongness of what she is feeling. She pulls back from the bond instead of pulling towards it, which is the only move she has left. But you watch her stop. You watch the Queen of Curses, who came back from death for this boy, choose not to destroy what she is holding onto, because the bond that made her the Queen of Curses, the thing that brought her back from death and kept her tethered to the world, it is also the thing that won't let her abandon what is still partly the boy she loved. Because it's not all Sukuna yet. There's still traces of Yuta in there, buried underneath everything, and Rika can feel every single one of them. That is what Sukuna was counting on. He doesn't break the bond. He takes control. He becomes enough of Yuta Kotsu that Rika can't bring herself to destroy what she is looking at. And so the Queen of Curses, who loved Yuta more than anything, becomes a weapon pointed in whatever direction the King of Curses chooses. Not because she was beaten, because she couldn't let go. And this is what everyone in Shibuya sees. Not a monster, not a weapon. The Queen of Curses, loyal to the last second possible, in the worst possible direction. And underneath all of it, Sukuna is smiling. Now here's a part of Kenjaku's new plan that nobody saw coming. There are 20 Sukuna fingers in existence. Yuta only swallowed one. That means Sukuna is running at a fraction of his full power, 1/20th to be exact, using Yuta's body and copy techniques alone. And Kenjaku has been collecting the rest. For months, he has used his network of curses and curse users to gather Ryumen Sukuna's fingers from finger bearer nests and sealed shrines across Japan. He doesn't have all of them. Gojo hid one to stop Sukuna from ever reaching full power, and several others are still locked inside Jujutsu High's vault behind barriers. But he has a significant amount, multiple, wrapped in talismans, and carried by Urame through the chaos of Shibuya like a delivery for the devil himself. And Sukuna, now controlling Yuta's body, eats every single one. Each one pours more of Sukuna's cursed energy into the body, stacking on top of Yuta's already massive reserves. And this is where things go from bad to something else entirely. Cleave goes from cutting through individual targets to carving through entire structures with a touch. Dismantle shreds everything at devastating range. And with Yuta's cursed energy amplifying each slash, the destruction spreads block by block. He uses copy techniques with so much power that the original users look weak in comparison, and the sorcerers who face him are completely outmatched. Their techniques mean nothing against a vessel running shrine, copy, reverse curse technique, and multiple of Ryumen Sukuna's fingers at once. And Sukuna doesn't waste time like he did in the OG Shibuya incident. He's much more organized. First, he takes down the communication channels, cutting off coordination between the sorcerer teams. Then he uses copy techniques to seal escape routes and force civilians and sorcerers into specific areas where Cleave and Dismantle can do the most damage. He doesn't just want to destroy Shibuya, he wants to make sure nobody leaves alive. alive. Maki reaches him first, and she notices it immediately. The eyes, the way the body moves, the absence of the person she knows. She fights anyway, because she always does. Sukuna steps around every attack and fires a cleave at her like he is bored, and she hits the ground. Nanami gets there last. He has spent his entire career fighting monsters, losing people, carrying the weight of a world that runs on grief. He has watched students die and kept going. He has done everything right and watched it not be enough and kept going anyway. And now he is standing in front of the boy he would have died without hesitation to protect. Except it's not that boy anymore. Nanami always fights, but it just doesn't matter. Since Satoru Gojo is sealed, the others left standing are forced to fight an OP Yuta. Every grade 1 sorcerer who reaches Sukuna Yuta is removed. Without hesitation, one by one, they all fall. And Kenjaku watches from the shadows and smiles, because this is exactly what he wants. The chaos, the destruction, the cursed energy flooding through Shibuya. All of it helps the great merger. Sukuna is not Kenjaku's enemy in this timeline. He's the thing speeding the plan up, and Shibuya is not a tragedy to Kenjaku. It is fuel. A Sukuna-possessed Yuta Kotsu at 12 fingers releases so much cursed energy that it does the work of far more than the Culling Game's 1,000 players. Kenjaku's plan does not just survive the timeline changes, it becomes even better. And here's the thing that makes this timeline worse than the original, and I mean genuinely worse. In the OG story, Sukuna took over Megumi Fushiguro, and the sorcerers still had time. They had time to unseal Gojo, time to prepare for what was coming. Megumi is still resisting from the inside, he's still creating openings, but Yuta is not creating anything, because Sukuna does not just break through Yuta's defenses, he consumes them. Every bit of resistance, every wall Yuta built, every connection to Rika that was supposed to protect him, Sukuna destroyed all of it. He is not fighting back from the inside, he's not waiting to be saved. The boy who wanted to protect everyone is completely unconscious. And that is what happens if Sukuna takes over Yuta instead. Not a heroic sacrifice, not a noble final stand, just a total loss. The sorcerers who survive Shibuya are left standing in the ruins of their own city. Their strongest ally has become their biggest nightmare, and the only person who can stop it is sealed inside the prison realm, carried away in the unknown. And this is the worst tragedy of all. Yuji Itadori is living an ordinary life, the one he never asked for in either version, and it's only possible because someone else had to pay for it, and he will never know. What's happening to Yuta right now is horrifying, but later, we'll see a version of Gojo that willingly became something even worse. So far, we've watched Sukuna destroy the future through Megumi, Yuta, and even an entirely different life. But the final two timelines share something different. They both revolve around the same person, the strongest sorcerer alive, or worse, when it still has him. At this point, it feels impossible for things to get worse. What happens when Kenjaku steals the strongest body in existence? Have you ever wondered what would happen if the greatest mind in Jujutsu history got the greatest body? Not through training or evolution, but through theft. What if Kenjaku, the cursed user who has been stealing bodies for over 1,000 years, took Gojo's corpse as his final vessel? He would gain the Six Eyes, the limitless technique, and near infinite cursed energy, all of it controlled by 1,000 years of combat experience and strategy. Would anyone even know what happened? And could anyone stop him if they did? Before we begin, there are two rules for this scenario. First, the timeline changes at the exact moment of Satoru Gojo's death in Shinjuku. Everything before chapter 236 stays the same. Second, Kenjaku's brain swapping technique works on Gojo's body just like it did with Geto. However, the Six Eyes may not work perfectly because they are connected to the Gojo bloodline and the brain. With that established, let's see what happens when the strongest sorcerer's body becomes the ancient sorcerer's new weapon. The story begins on December 24th in Shinjuku, the night that should have been the end of an era. Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer alive, has just fallen to Ryumen Sukuna. The king of curses stands over Gojo's bisected body, admiring the only opponent who pushed him this far in 1,000 years. Sukuna does not desecrate the corpse, he simply turns and walks away, satisfied that the only person who could truly threaten him is gone. The sorcerers watching from a distance are frozen in horror. Yuta Kotsu is already moving with Rika beside him, but they are too far away to stop anything. Maki is barely conscious. Yuji is on his knees. Kenjaku is watching everything through his cursed spirit network. He sees Satoru Gojo's cursed energy disappear in real time on his phone, the same way Hazanoki did. And at that moment, Kenjaku is inside the Lake Gosho colony, but he already knows that the body will not be moved immediately. The battlefield is too chaotic. So the moment Gojo's cursed energy disappears, Kenjaku starts moving. By the time he arrives, the sorcerers are still too shocked to properly react. And this isn't luck for Kenjaku. He planned for this possibility long before it happened. He knew Gojo and Sukuna would destroy each other because he studied both of them for years and stayed close enough to watch without interfering. In 1,000 years, he has learned that his best chances come right after chaos begins. He's lived through countless bodies across 11 centuries. His technique lets his brain move into new bodies and take over their abilities. But he has never tried taking a body like Gojo. Gojo's body lies in two pieces, but cursed energy is still flowing through it. Reverse curse technique was active when he died, so the body is still usable and not beyond repair for someone like Kenjaku. Kenjaku moves quickly because he does not have much time. Yuta could return at any moment, and Shoko could also arrive to take the body away. Kenjaku kneels beside Gojo and activates his technique. Kenjaku's brain begins leaving Geto's body and connects itself to Gojo's nervous system. Geto's body collapses completely, for the first time since Gojo killed him. Then Gojo opens his eyes again. The first sensation is overwhelming. Kenjaku has taken powerful bodies before. Naruto Shikamo had blood manipulation and a sorcerer sorcerer bloodline refined for generations. Suguru Geto had cursed spirit manipulation and the power of a special grade. But Gojo's body is completely different. The six eyes activate the moment Kenjaku connects them to the brain. He suddenly sees cursed energy everywhere, flowing through the air around him. He feels limitless inside his mind, and a barrier that reacts before he even fully thinks. At that moment, Kenjaku understands why Satoru Gojo was called the strongest. But there is a problem. In a normal Gojo, the six eyes and Limitless developed together since childhood. Gojo spent his entire life mastering that connection through training and combat, and Kenjaku does not have those same neural pathways. He estimates that he can only use the abilities at around 85% efficiency, but that is still enough to fool almost anyone and make him the most dangerous person on the planet. But it's still not enough to completely match Gojo at his peak. Gojo has been conscious for less than a minute. He has no time to understand what is happening. The split across his body disappears as Kenjaku activates reverse curse technique, using the body's remaining healing capability. The only strange thing is a light scar across Gojo's forehead, barely visible and easy to mistake for a fresh wound from the battle. But Kenjaku already learned how to fold the forehead skin and cursed energy together to seal it from the inside, and all that remains is a small line that will likely disappear within a few hours. Yuta freezes while Rika floats beside him. Kenjaku, now wearing Satoru Gojo's face, looks up and smiles. There's only one person in the Jujutsu world whose perception Kenjaku cannot afford to ignore, and he has already underestimated her. He speaks in Gojo's usual relaxed tone. He says the fight was close and Sukuna was much stronger than expected, and that he had barely survived. He makes it sound like simple exhaustion. Yuta wants to believe him. All of them do, because the other possibility is too horrifying to think about. Kenjaku knows he needs time to understand the six eyes better, and that he cannot return to Jujutsu High and act normal. The students would notice, and most importantly, Shoko would notice. So he chooses something that fits Gojo perfectly. He isolates himself and says he needs time to recover. Yuta tries to argue, but Kenjaku shuts him down using the same confidence Gojo always had. He acts like recovery is guaranteed and everything is under control. Then he leaves the responsibility to the others, tells them to manage without him, and disappears. He uses Gojo's authority to enter a secure Gojo clan facility that only the six eyes can access. The first week is all about adaptation. Kenjaku spends that time learning how to use Limitless and how Infinity responds to his thoughts. But it's not as smooth as it was for Gojo, and a skilled opponent could notice that weakness. 85% of Gojo's power, combined with Kenjaku's 1,000-year of experience, is still enough to make his next move. 3 weeks after Shinjuku, he returns. The Jujutsu world believes Gojo is recovering. Yuta tells everyone their teacher survived and is healing from injuries that should have killed him. The higher-ups accept it immediately, and the students celebrate. Only Shoko feels that something is wrong, but she can't explain why because the cursed energy feels like Gojo's. So she stays quiet and keeps watching, waiting for the feeling to finally make sense. Rather than returning to the school for good, Kenjaku moves through Jujutsu Society with a plan that feels completely natural. He goes after the higher-ups and removes the same traditional leaders who wanted Yuji executed and protected the Zenin clan's corruption. To the more progressive sorcerers, it looks like Gojo is finally doing what he always talked about, using his overwhelming power to force change. But Kenjaku's changes are not really meant to improve things. They are preparations for his bigger plan. He is removing anything that could get in the way of his real goal while making it look like progress. He eliminates the higher-ups not because they are corrupt, but because they are unpredictable. He promotes younger sorcerers not because he believes in them, but because they're easier to control and keep loyal. Every day Kenjaku spends inside Gojo's body brings him closer to his real goal. The merger with Tengen has always been the final plan. Now he is closer than ever to making it happen, and the world has no idea. The first real crack appears when Yuta Okotsu finally gets the chance to copy a technique, not from theory, but from an actual piece of flesh. He has been collecting techniques from powerful sorcerers, and now he finally has direct access to one. During a controlled fight that Yuta sets up, Rika consumes one of Kenjaku's severed hands after he sacrifices it, trying to end the battle quickly. The moment it happens, Yuta fully understands how the technique works, and what he learns scares him. The man who walked away from the Shinjuku battlefield is not Gojo. It is Kenjaku using Gojo's corpse like a new body. Yuta does not confront Kenjaku immediately, because if he's right, then the strongest person in the world is actually an imposter who now controls half of Jujutsu Society. He needs allies. First, he goes to Maki because Maki trusts no one. Her heavenly restriction also makes her invisible to cursed energy detection, which means the six eyes cannot sense her normally. Then he contacts Yuji, because Yuji still carries traces of Sukuna, and might notice something is wrong through soul level perception. Finally, he approaches Shoko, because she has been suspicious from the start, and her reverse curse technique might damage Gojo's body without destroying it. The resistance forms in secret, and they meet in places that Kenjaku does not monitor. Yuji is devastated by Yuta's theory. He wants to believe it's wrong, but he starts paying attention, and the more he watches, the more it feels like someone acting like Gojo instead of actually being him. Kenjaku eventually realizes that people are starting to suspect him. Yuta stops reporting to him directly. Maki Zenin disappears from her usual locations, and Yuji starts looking at him with sadness that Kenjaku does not understand. Kenjaku thinks about crushing them right now. He could use Unlimited Void and wipe out the resistance before it grows, but doing that would expose him completely, so instead, he speeds up his plan. 1,000 years is a very long time to want something. Kenjaku crossed that time by moving from body to body the way normal people move from from room to room. He remembers the first transplant clearly. It was not a special grade or anyone famous, just a sorcerer with a useful bloodline and a brain he needed. Memories of the Heian era return to him, working from the shadows while the jujutsu world slowly becomes what it is now. He remembers using blood manipulation in Noritoshi Kamo's body, and thinking he might never find a better vessel. Then came Geto's body with massive cursed energy reserves, and everything has been leading to this. He approaches Master Tengen's barriers, and Gojo's 6 eyes activate. Every part of the barrier system becomes visible to him. He can see the weak points, the unstable sections, and the places where different barriers were connected over the centuries. Kenjaku moves through them effortlessly. The Limitless activates as he steps inside. Even at 85%, the power is overwhelming. Standing there, he finally understands why Satoru Gojo acted the way he did. When someone carries this much power and perception in one body, they start believing they can solve every problem themselves. Gojo's arrogance was not just a personality flaw. With power like this, it starts to feel normal. But Kenjaku has been planning for this moment for 3 centuries. The Culling Game, the Awakened Sorcerers, and the merger conditions were all built to reach this exact point. In any other body with any other power, the remaining work would have taken another century. But now he stands inside Tengen's barrier with the 6 eyes. The 6 eyes lets him see every weakness in the barrier structure. Master Tengen does not react with surprise. Tengen simply looks at him like this conversation was expected for a long time. And that's exactly when Yuta makes his move. He cannot defeat Kenjaku Gojo directly. Even at 85% efficiency, Limitless and 6 eyes make direct combat almost impossible. But Yuta realizes something Kenjaku has ignored because of his arrogance. The transplant only works because cursed energy keeps it active. Kenjaku's brain is not just sitting inside Gojo's skull. The technique is holding it together through cursed binding marks that keep the foreign tissue alive. If those connections are severed, the body dies. Gojo is already dead. There's no way to save him. But there's still a way to stop Kenjaku from using his body. The battle takes place at the center of the merger ritual. Yuta attacks first. He uses copy techniques from every sorcerer he has fought. He uses cursed speech to stop movement. Then he uses Takako Uro's sky manipulation to distort the space around Kenjaku Gojo and create small gaps in infinity. Rika crashes into him with raw force. Kenjaku defends with infinity, but the technique starts flickering under constant pressure. The imperfect coordination creates small openings. Then Yuji joins the attack, landing Black Flash after Black Flash through pure grief and rage. Maki fights at close range. Her heavenly restriction lets her bypass the cursed energy sensing that normally warns Kenjaku. She cuts across his back, and it's the first time Gojo's body has bled since Shinjuku. Kenjaku activates Unlimited Void. The domain opens, and for a moment, the resistance is completely overwhelmed. Infinite information floods their minds and leaves them unable to move. But Yuta, who has studied Unlimited Void during his training with Gojo, understands exactly how the domain works. Authentic mutual love opens around them. Swords cover the ground, each one carrying a copy technique. The two domains clash against each other. Infinity begins to flicker. Maki, who has no cursed energy, recovers first. Yuji, who has faced Mahito's soul attacks and survived what no ordinary sorcerer could, recovers seconds later. Then, Angel, secretly contacted through Hana Kurusu, fires Jacob's ladder. The light does not target flesh. It targets the cursed energy keeping the flesh alive inside a foreign body. The binding marks Kenjaku created over 1,000 years of body swapping begin to burn away. The cursed energy linking his brain to Satoru Gojo's nervous system begin to break apart. Jacob's ladder was made to extinguish cursed techniques. Kenjaku surviving inside another person's body is itself a cursed technique. The light does not care whether it is destroying a domain or a body transplant. It purifies both. For the first time, the ancient sorcerer feels fear. His brain starts detaching. The cursed energy connections that kept him alive for 1,000 years are cut one by one. Gojo's body is finally free, but it's already too late. Reverse curse technique cannot save a body that has been dead for months. But then the body smiles slightly, almost like some small part of Gojo realized that his students finally did what he could not. Kenjaku's brain falls to the ground, exposed and dying. He has survived for 1,000 years by always having another body ready. But this time, there are no spare bodies left, only enemies who spent months preparing for this moment. Yuji steps forward. Cursed energy gathers around his fist. Then he crushes the brain of the oldest curse user in history, not with some special technique. He does so using only the anger and grief of a student who lost his teacher. The merger ritual collapses without Kenjaku directing it anymore. Tengen stabilizes the barriers. The awakened civilians return to normal, confused but unharmed. Yuta carries Gojo's body back to Jujutsu High. They give him a proper funeral, small and private. Only the people who knew Gojo before he became a legend are there. Yuji places a photo on the casket. It's from the first year's first mission together. Gojo has his arm around Yuji, and both of them are smiling. The Jujutsu world learns the truth. They mourn him twice. First for the death they saw in Shinjuku, then again after learning what happened to his body. And the scary part is that this isn't even the darkest version of Gojo we'll see today. What if none of that was necessary? What if the strongest sorcerer alive simply chose to do it himself? Have you ever wondered what would happen if the strongest sorcerer alive decided the world no longer deserved his protection? Not possessed or manipulated, just Satoru Gojo, with every technique he's ever mastered, looking at the Jujutsu world and deciding to burn all of it down. We're going to watch him tear the old order apart piece by piece, follow Kenjaku scramble to control something he no longer understands, and find out what, if anything, it actually takes to make Satoru Gojo stop. In this timeline, that's exactly what happened. happens. The story changes on the night that originally broke Gojo forever, the night that he killed his best friend. But instead of burying that grief and becoming a teacher, this Gojo lets it take him apart completely. The timeline splits during the night parade of 100 demons. In canon, Gojo finds Geto after the massacre and kills him. He carries the pain for years and becomes a teacher. But here, something changes. Geto is dying on the street. He says the same words: "I simply cannot be happy in this world no matter what." Gojo hears him, but this time, standing over the only person who ever treated Gojo as an equal, he doesn't feel determination. He just feels cold. And that feeling has been building for a long time, since Riko Amanai died in his arms, since the higher-ups treated Megami like property to be sold. Over and over, the jujutsu system showed him that it cares more about power than people. Gojo looked at Geto and realized something. Geto is wrong about the target. The problem is never ordinary humans. The problem is the system itself, and Gojo decided he's done waiting. The higher-ups at Jujutsu headquarters wake up the next morning to find their entire enforcement division gone. Gojo moves through the compound fast enough that most of them never get a chance to react. Blue pulls walls inward. Red launches people through reinforced doors before they can open a domain. The grade 1 sorcerers who do manage to activate their techniques run straight into Unlimited Void, which Gojo opens for 0.2 seconds. And that's enough. Infinite information floods their minds in less time than a blink. When the domain closes, they can't function anymore. But one grade 1 sorcerer figures out what is happening before the others. He runs down the stairs, out the building, 3 blocks into the city before he stops to catch his breath. He looks up and Gojo is already there, waiting and using Technique Blue. The wall behind him caves inward. His impact crater ends up further from the building than every other victim. He's the only one who tries to run. By noon, the Jujutsu establishment is gone. The same person who wanted Yuji Itadori executed finally understands that their world only worked because Gojo let it. And now that Gojo's finished letting the system take advantage of people, the higher-ups that can do something are gone. Which means, when the next catastrophe arrives, there will be no one left to stop it. Utahime Iori watches from a distance. She has known Gojo since they were teenagers. She has seen him laugh, complain, and carry the burden of being the strongest like it was all one big joke. Now, she watches him walk away from a building he reduced to rubble. She doesn't move because there's nowhere left to go. Later, Nanami arrives and stands silently in the wreckage. He takes one long look around before turning to Meimei. He tells her that they can't really fight him. All they can do is survive. Meimei nods almost immediately, and then she disappears. She's a businesswoman, and she knows the moment the market changes. Nanami watches her go and doesn't say a word. He already knows that she's right. But there's a question that nobody's asking yet, one that Nanami has already considered, is what exactly they're supposed to be surviving towards. If Gojo is going down a dark path, is there any point in trying to stop it? The news spreads fast, but initially people don't panic. It's almost silent. It's the kind of silence that happens when something so massive occurs that people need time to accept that it's real. Gojo hasn't called himself a villain. He's declared himself the new law, and nobody alive can truly argue with him. He takes over Tokyo Jujutsu High, and the students don't get a vote. Maki Zenin, free from her clan but now under Gojo's rule, trains harder than ever, angry enough that even Panda keeps his distance. Toge Inumaki gets monitored because cursed speech is one of the few things that could theoretically be used to give Gojo an order, and Yuto watches everything from far away. He has heard enough stories about Gojo to understand exactly what he can do. Gojo knows Yuta is tracking him, and he also knows Yuta will eventually become a problem. The Jujutsu world can't be rebuilt overnight. The structures are gone. What grows in their place is held together by one question: what happens when Gojo decides that even this isn't enough? And that question sits underneath every conversation and every plan people try to make, because the real fear is not the destruction, it's the uncertainty that comes after it. Then there's Yuji Itadori. In canon, Gojo stands between Yuji and the execution order. He walks into that hearing, makes his case, and brings Yuji as his student. The higher-ups hate it, but they don't stop it because they can't stop Gojo. But here, there's no Gojo to stop anything. Yuji still eats Sukuna's finger. He still wakes up with Sukuna's voice in his head, and still manages to pull control back. He still does everything that should have been enough to survive. There's no sign that Yuji himself has changed at all. He's still the same kid who grabbed a cursed object to save his grandfather's friends without thinking twice about it. But the higher-ups find him, and without Gojo in that room, the sentence goes through exactly as planned. Yuji Itadori is executed before he ever sees Tokyo Jujutsu High, before he ever meets Megami, or Nobara, or Nanami, before he becomes the person the canon timeline was built around. And the thing that makes it land hard is not how dramatic it is, it's just how routine everything feels. The machinery the old system built does exactly what it was designed to do. It just never had to do it before because Gojo was always standing in the way. Now Sukuna's fingers stay scattered across Japan. The King of Curses remains trapped in fragments instead of returning as one being. And Kenjaku, who has spent 1,000 years building towards a specific outcome, has just lost his entire foundation without knowing it. So Kenjaku watches everything from the shadows, and for the first time in centuries, he doesn't have a clear next move. His entire plan depended on Yuji Itadori becoming the vessel, and Gojo staying predictable enough to seal during Shibuya. The prison realm strategy only works if you have someone distracted, surrounded by things they want to protect. But this Gojo is not protecting anything anymore, so there's nothing left to exploit. Kenjaku has spent 1,000 years adapting to every shift in the Jujutsu world, every era, every disaster, every genius. But an unchecked Gojo who has already decided the old system deserves to die is something else entirely. Kenjaku starts improvising, forcing Sukuna's remaining fingers into imperfect vessels, curse users who can survive holding maybe 10 fingers before their bodies completely break down. He surfaces twice after Shibuya to test Gojo's perimeter. Both times, Gojo Gojo finds him within a minute, and both times Kenjaku retreats. On the second encounter, Satoru Gojo watches Kenjaku disappear and does not follow him. He could, but instead, he just turns around and walks back towards the school. Nanami watches this from a rooftop and quietly files it away, because Gojo choosing not to finish something is not mercy. Gojo is still curious about Kenjaku, and that means there's still something that he wants to see. To Nanami, that is even more terrifying than if Gojo had simply destroyed everything without stopping, because it means Gojo is still planning stuff in his head. He has some sort of end goal that no one else knows about. And to make things more dramatic, nobody knows how much worse this could get before it ends, or if it's even going to end at all. So October 31st arrives. In canon, this becomes the Shibuya incident, the day Kenjaku and the disaster curses seal Satoru Gojo inside the prison realm while civilians surround him. But here, there's no trap waiting to happen. Gojo is not walking into Shibuya to protect people. He's already there waiting. He knows Kenjaku has a plan, and he's done letting other people control the timeline. Jogo and Hanami arrive, expecting a distracted sorcerer surrounded by hostages, but instead, they find Gojo sitting alone on a rooftop, casually eating sweets. Jogo attacks first with Maximum Meteor. Gojo doesn't even stand up. He lifts one finger, and Infinity stops the meteor completely. Jogo charges forward. Blue drags him off his feet in the middle of his attack. He tries to answer with volcanic eruptions, but red explodes in his face before the technique can fully form. The street beneath him melts into glass from the heat. The entire fight lasts less than 30 seconds. Hanami runs immediately, but Six Eyes follows her movements across the district without effort. Gojo just appears in front of her, already charging Hollow Purple between his hands, and erases her instantly. Meanwhile, Mahito hides deep in the subway tunnels, and for the first time, he feels fear. He tries to escape, but Gojo is already standing there waiting. Idol Transfiguration reaches towards Gojo's soul, but Infinity stops the touch before it happens. Gojo grabs Mahito by the throat and lifts him in the air. Then he says one phrase, "You're weak." Mahito dies screaming. While Gojo is tearing through Shibuya, a resistance slowly starts forming. It's not organized, and it's definitely not confident. The resistance is just a few sorcerers sitting inside a ruined building, trying to solve a problem that has no clean answer. Megumi watches Gojo's new world with the same cold logic that his father used for everything, and eventually reaches out to Yuta. They meet secretly in the ruins of the Zenin clan compound. Maki Zenin is already there, holding Playful Cloud, her body pushed to Toji level ability through months of rage and brutal training. But even then, they know it's not enough. The resistance needs to find a gap in something that was never designed to have one. But this is when Yuta remembers something Gojo once explained to him. The only situations that have ever forced Gojo to stop and think are the ones where the threat itself is unpredictable. Six Eyes processes everything, but seeing everything and choosing what to respond to first are two different things entirely. With Rika Orimoto fully manifested, the cursed energy flooding out of her is messy and inconsistent, because she's built from copy techniques stacked together unnaturally. The Six Eyes can classify her, but Rika's energy is volatile enough that Gojo cannot assume her next move. He has to watch her continuously, and that means he's splitting his attention between her and everything else in the courtyard. Megumi is quiet for a long moment after Yuta explains it. Then he says flatly, "So we're not fighting him, we're just hoping that he blinks." Nobody argues with that, because they already know the truth. They probably can't overpower Gojo. This is not a realistic plan at all. It's more of a prayer, hoping that something goes their way. But they keep going, because what else is there to do? Earlier, Nobara Kukisaki had prepared a straw doll with a piece of fabric from Gojo's uniform that she had pocketed during a training exercise. Not because they already had a strategy, but because Nobara always kept options open. Resonance needs the doll, the nail, and a clear cursed energy connection. And normally, Infinity blocks a cursed energy transfer automatically. But if Gojo's focus is divided between Rika's volatile energy and the physical attacks coming from Maki and Megumi, his automatic defenses might treat the resonance channel as a lower priority than the immediate physical threats. Not enough to seriously hurt him, just enough to make him feel something unexpected. And if Gojo feels surprised for even a fraction of a second, that is where the domain comes in. The Resistance's plan is not heroic. It's a technical exploit balanced entirely on a half-second gap. A gap built on one terrifying idea. Gojo has never faced something he cannot immediately understand, and they're betting everything on the moment before he finally does. And they all understand what happens if they're wrong. There's no second chance. Gojo senses the trap when he gets back from patrol. Yuta is already waiting in the courtyard while Rika manifests behind him, cursed energy flooding through the air. Gojo smiles, but there's nothing warm about it. He tells Yuta that he finally decided to make a move, and then he calls it good. Yuta immediately opens his domain expansion, and Gojo is not expecting this. Inside the domain, Yuta attacks with everything that he has, copying cursed speech, copying blood manipulation, techniques taken from opponents Gojo never trained him to fight against. The Six Eyes locks onto Rika, and immediately begins classifying and reclassifying. Energy signatures keep overlapping in ways that do not fit neatly into anything Gojo already knows. Nobara uses resonance. The cursed energy channels through the doll and the nail target the hair that she has planted. Infinity registers the incoming technique, but Gojo's focus is split three ways, and the resonance hits at the exact moment he commits to countering Maki's punch. The technique doesn't break though, but the timing forces Gojo to recalibrate. His stance shifts half a step, not a wound, a recalibration. For the first time in the fight, he's reacting instead of controlling. Everyone in the courtyard sees it, and for the first time, Gojo's students feel hope. Gojo turns and looks at Nobara like he's properly seeing her for the first time. Then, Maki Zenin moves from behind, with a raw physical speed at the same level Toji Fushiguro once fought with, but Infinity stops her punch instantly. Even then, Gojo still has to turn towards her, and by then, Megumi is already moving. The Ten Shadows technique opens, and darkness floods the courtyard. Shikigami attacks from every direction, not to kill Gojo, but to overload his attention. Divine Dog, Toad, Nue. They throw themselves into infinity and die immediately, but each one forces the Six Eyes to track, process, and prioritize. And right in the middle of the chaos, Kenjaku's imperfect vessel finally breaks apart. Sukuna forces his way out, not fully manifested, only 15 fingers worth of power, but enough that this partial form towers over the courtyard. 2 arms instead of 4. No malevolent shrine, but his dismantle and cleave are already active, and the cursed energy pouring off of Sukuna is dense enough that Gojo's Six Eyes registers him as the highest priority threat. Sukuna grins. He has been waiting for this for years. The two domains collide, barriers press against each other, Gojo's unlimited void, and Sukuna's incomplete field grinding together at the edges. Sure hit effects nullify each other in the overlap zone. The courtyard becomes a space where both techniques are active, and neither can fully land. The pressure alone cracks the ground beneath them, but Sukuna has watched Maharaga adapt to infinity during its fight with Gojo. He recognizes the same patterns in Gojo's automatic defenses. He starts varying his attack angles faster than infinity can fully adjust, forcing Gojo to manually respond instead of letting the system handle it. Dismantle cuts through the attraction field Blue creates, severing the cursed energy threads before they can pull Sukuna off balance. Red's repulsion blast meets Cleave head-on, and the collision throws both of them backwards. Gojo starts dodging. For the first time since he was 17 years old, Gojo can't see the end of this fight. He fires Hollow Purple, but Sukuna's regeneration kicks in. Cursed energy in his body rebuilding damaged tissue faster than any human can manage. He keeps moving forward. Their attacks collide hard enough to flatten their surrounding buildings. Sukuna keeps reopening his domain, learning Gojo's patterns the same way Maharaga adapted to infinity. But the vessel is failing. Sukuna's arms suddenly lock up. His domain starts flickering apart. The host body is dying. Sukuna actually has a real chance here, and Kenjaku's carelessness has ruined it. Then the domains reach their limit. Gojo's unlimited void and Sukuna's incomplete field both exhaust their cursed energy reserves at the exact same time. Both barriers dissolve and both sides are forced back. Sukuna's vessel drops to the ground. The extra arms dissolve, and the host finally gives out. From the shadows, Kenjaku appears, grabs the body, and disappears immediately. Gojo could chase after him, but he doesn't, because he already got what he wanted out of this, and so did Sukuna. And Kenjaku, who engineered every single part of the situation, is the only one who failed. Gojo turns back to the courtyard. Yuta is unconscious. Maki is on the ground with a broken arm, still trying to push herself back up. Megumi and Nobara are barely standing, holding each other against a shattered pillar. He looks at Megumi, whose father killed Riko Amanai, and whose clan treated him like property. He looks at Nobara, who has never backed down from anything. He looks at Maki, who fought her entire family and survived with nothing except the will to keep going. And finally, he looks at Yuta, the first student he ever saved. The same student who just used everything Gojo taught him against him. Gojo lowers his hand, and Blue fades away. He does not explain anything. He simply turns and walks away. Not because he suddenly went soft, but because killing them would be easy, and Gojo has never chosen the easy path. He chose to carry the burden of being the strongest to protect a world he already believed was broken. He chose to kill his best friend himself instead of letting someone else do it. And now, standing in front of students who are beaten, broken, and still refusing to give up, he makes another choice. He lets them live, but not out of mercy. He leaves them with the same weight he carried all those years. Let them rebuild the world. Let them carry the burden of changing it, and let them discover whether they can survive that weight without breaking the same way that he did. After that, Satoru Gojo walks alone. He's not evil the same way Ryumen Sukuna is evil, and he's not a mastermind like Kenjaku. He's just a man who carried too much power, too much grief, and eventually lost everyone who could remind him where the line was supposed to be. And that's what makes Jujutsu Kaisen so fascinating. The techniques stayed the same, the rules stayed the same, but the people changed. Megumi made one desperate choice. Yuta tried to save people. Kenjaku found a better body. Gojo lost faith. And every single time, the world paid the price. Which timeline was the most hopeless? Let me know in the comments.